Greetings to all. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to present on nutrition-sensitive aquatic food systems. In my presentation today, I will talk a bit about the global food and nutrition security and how we are moving forward after the UN Food Systems Summit. Then continue on to aquatic foods. Why are aquatic foods considered as superfoods for nourishing nations? And then move on to 4 examples of nutrition-sensitive aquatic food systems approaches, which we, WorldFish, with our partners, are working on in different parts of the world. And then I will conclude with 3 recommendations. We all are working towards the targets of the Sustainable Development Goals up to 2030. But we do know where we are today in 2020, that we are missing ground on some of the important steps that we have taken in the last 2 decades. In Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, where we have high population densities, we also have many millions of people who faced hunger. And in 2020, more people were going hungry due to COVID-19 and to other disruptions to food and nutrition security. Very worrisome, the gender gap in prevalence of food insecurity increased from 2019 to 2020. It was 10% higher among women than for men. And it is worrying, the degree of malnutrition in children. More than 1 in every 5 child is stunted. So we continue to fight with the great difficulties in meeting food and nutrition security and reaching SDG 2, zero hunger and zero malnutrition. And now, with the war in Ukraine and with disruptions in food, fertilizer, and fuel, FAO has estimated that alone this year, 13 million more people will be in need of food handouts. Let us look at where we are globally and at the global narrative moving forward. The UN Food Systems Summit was held in 2021, and that came to a culmination after more than 2 years of deliberations, dialogues, discussions among many different partners. It was considered to be a people's summit. Within that process, the scientific group of the United Nations Food Systems Summit 2021 identified 7 priority areas for solutions moving forward towards zero hunger and malnutrition. One of these 7 prioritization was sustain aquatic foods, with focus on increasing the nutritional diversity in aquatic foods and the value that aquatic foods have to sequester carbon in marine and freshwater environments. Therefore, we can safely say that the transformation of food systems is incomplete without the inclusion of aquatic foods. Aquatic foods was incorporated across all 5 action areas of the UN Food Systems Summit. And moving forward with the follow-up through the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub, which is led by FAO, then there are many opportunities in which aquatic foods can play a role to nourish people and planet. For example, the inclusion in school feeding programs and the inclusion in food-based safety nets. What are aquatic foods? Aquatic foods are many, several thousands of diverse animal, plants, and microorganisms that are farmed in and harvested from different water bodies. They are obtained from diverse environments, the oceans and inland waters. We know in Asia that rice fields and floodplains play a most important role for the aquatic food systems. And in Africa, for example, the Great Lake regions are very important for aquatic food systems. Aquatic foods are important as a food which is consumed by over 3 billion people worldwide. But it's also important in terms of providing livelihoods and income for over 800 million people. Many, including myself, consider aquatic foods as superfoods. Firstly, we must recognize the diversity, the vast diversity of aquatic foods. And this means that within aquatic foods, there's a vast diversity of nutritional quality. Many aquatic foods contain multiple highly bioavailable micronutrients, both vitamins and minerals, and some are rich in essential fatty acids, which are important for cognition and development. And therefore, just in terms of food, we can consider aquatic foods as being superfoods. However, there are other benefits of aquatic foods, the socioeconomic benefits, as we named before, livelihoods and income. And we know that many women are engaged in aquatic food systems, especially in the supply chains, and there is a growing increase and a growing need for youth engagement. Therefore, if we would work together with the different groups of people, we can also have benefits in terms of building up capacity within aquatic food systems. Then also, we must remember the environmental benefits in terms of ecology rehabilitation, and also take into consideration that the production of many aquatic foods are at a low environmental cost compared to many other foods. I like to use the term nourishing and nourishing people and nations. And this is a change in the narrative from feeding a growing population. This also means that we shift the focus from the quantity of a few staple foods to also include quality. Quality, not just in terms of nutritional quality, but also in terms of food safety and of diverse aquatic foods. Then we must consider how do we transform the food systems by having a people-centered approach, engaging actors at all stages of the food systems. And many times in the past and up to today, we begin with producers, but I do think it is time that we start to consider much more consumers' demands, consumers' perceptions, and consumers' wishes. Within the 2 years leading up to the UN Food System Summit, there has been a growing recognition and acknowledgement of the important role that aquatic foods play in nourishing people and planet. 2 important documents that we have come out from the UN nutrition discussion paper on aquatic foods, and the other from the Blue Food Assessment, which gathered about more than 100 scientists from many different institutions, led by Stanford University and the Stockholm Resilience Center, And they published a series of peer-reviewed articles on the multiple benefits of aquatic foods. Let us talk a bit about the UN Nutrition Discussion Paper. Also, since this paper was acknowledged by the UN Nutrition and its many partners. It was the first UN nutrition paper that was produced in 2021, and it addresses the need for a global narrative on nutrition to promote diets that are socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable. In this paper, the importance of aquatic foods for sustainable, healthy diets was recognized. And the paper presents the evidence, which is so very important to inform and steer policies, investments, and research. Also importantly, this paper provided recommendations as to how aquatic foods can be used in improving global food and nutrition security. Let us now look at some examples of nutrition-sensitive aquatic systems approaches. Before we do that, let's talk about certain principles that we have worked with in defining the aquatic food systems, nutrition-sensitive approaches. Firstly, putting people at the center. So meeting the nutritional needs of people, especially the poor and vulnerable, women and children in the first 1,000 days of life, and working on the principle of leaving no one behind. Thereafter, using multiple entry points in the food systems framework, not just through production, but also with consumers, the supply chains, policies, investments, research, the communities, traditional knowledge, many different entry points within the food systems approach. Importantly, is recognizing and making use of the diversity that exists in aquatic food systems. And then looking at several approaches that are context-specific and fit the needs of people. So beginning by knowing what is it people do and communities and what is it they would like to do. So also taking into consideration their needs and aspirations and their traditional knowledge. I will present on 4 approaches that we have worked with WorldFish, with partners in Africa, in Asia, and on the Pacific. And these 4 are: 1, diversifying the consumption of aquatic foods; 2, improving the diversity in production and supply chains; inclusion of aquatic foods in national and state policies; and lastly, a bit about engaging women and youth and increasing the engagement of women and youth in aquatic food systems. In order to diversify consumption of aquatic foods, and we focused especially in women and young children, the first 1,000 days of life, because benefits to the health and well-being of women and the growth and development of children in their 1,000 days of lives give intergenerational benefits and national developmental benefits. We've developed diverse, context-specific aquatic food products. For example, a dried fish product using small fish, since these are very rich in multiple micronutrients. Also, looking at the fish chutney, which we've produced in different countries, which are culturally acceptable, especially for women and pregnant and lactating women. And then in Cambodia, one of our partners has worked with development of a fish wafer, which is used especially in the treatment of malnourished, in the treatment of malnourished children. Aquatic foods and their products are extremely important in being superfoods, but in order that they can be used by population groups, they must be convenient, they must have a high shelf life, must be accessible and affordable. And by making these products, we have shown in the communities that we work that we hit many of these advantages of products. We've worked with diversifying production and supply chains of aquatic foods. And let me give a few examples. For example, beginning in Bangladesh, but also moving to other countries in Asia and also to Zambia and Malawi in Africa. We've introduced pond polyculture of diverse fish species, both small-sized fish species and large fish species. And we've done so in many different water bodies, starting with homestead ponds. We've moved on in Odisha and Assam to village water tanks with groups of women and also wetland water bodies. We've also used integrated production systems, integrating aquatic systems with terrestrial systems. For example, aquatic foods in ponds and water bodies, vegetables, highly nutritious vegetables on the banks of the ponds, and then integration with rice fields. With respect to the supply chains, we've introduced and worked with communities to use solar drying, both at household level and at community level. And in the Solomon Islands, we've worked with communities on solar-powered freezers for marine fish. Both in Bangladesh at national level and in India at state level in Odisha, we've been able to have close collaboration with the government sector to include aquatic foods in national and state policies. In Bangladesh, in the Bangladesh Second Country Investment Plan, called Nutrition Sensitive Food Systems, pond polyculture of small and large fish species is considered the foremost intervention for nutrition sensitive food systems. And in Odisha, small fish products have been included in the strategy for Odisha's pathway to accelerated nutrition. And this has been done through pilots done with school feeding programs and also take-home rations for women and girls. We've used dried powder, dried fish powder, and also whole dried fish, which have been taken home by women and girls in their rations. Engaging women and youth is an important part of ensuring that aquatic food systems play an important role in nourishing people and planet. We do know from data, it may be insufficient data, but the data tells us that 1 in every 2 workers in the primary and secondary sector of aquatic food systems is a woman. We do know that youth participation is low, especially participation of young females. And therefore, we would like to work further and with many more partners to create space for social inclusion through policy interventions with policymakers, investments for innovations, but also investments for research, investments for ensuring that we capture traditional knowledge, improving on data and technology opportunities, and further enhancing capacity. In conclusion, I would like to give 3 recommendations. Firstly, we must recognize the crucial role of aquatic foods in food, land, and water systems transformation. And in doing so, we must recognize the roles not only as being nutritious, but sustainable, and very importantly, being equitable and meeting the needs of all. We must amplify investments in research, in innovations, and the scaling up of solutions at all levels, at household, national, regional, and global levels. And importantly, we must value aquatic foods for nourishing nations beyond just the monetary value in terms of quantity of production and trade. Holistic food, land, and water system transformation, as was called for in the UN Food Systems Summit, and as we are moving forward with throughout many global agendas, is only possible with the inclusion of aquatic foods. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to address you today. Thank you.